Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 3M Open Data Dive Show. Forgive me, I am broadcasting through the middle of a thunderstorm. Such is life in the Midwest. So if the stream freezes or, heaven forbid, gets kicked off, I will try and reconnect, but might have to reschedule, but can't control the weather. But we are here for everything 3M and TPC Twin Cities. Don't know how much time I'm going to have. It's a pretty impressive thunderstorm, so I'm going to try to get through this show as quickly as possible. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and a much smarter, better golf DFS player. Go check them out. It's simply well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. My Twitter and Instagram. I did end up posting some research earlier today around the winners of the 3M. Not a lot in common since there's only been 4 years. So if you want to see the players that qualify under the pattern that I have found for the previous 4 winners and what that pattern is, then give me a follow at your preferred social media site, Twitter or Instagram. Twitter is also where I place my weekly betting cards for the PGA Tour. And last week you would have seen that I had the Akshay Bhatia outright at 40-1. So if you want to see the weekly wagers I make on the PGA Tour, then give me a follow over at Twitter as well. And Twitter is also where I do my baseball content, a little bit hit and miss in the summer with me being pretty busy. Hopefully that'll pick up again here soon. But if you want to see quick hitting baseball content, give me a follow over at Twitter as well. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's Twitter is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. I highly suggest you give him a follow and subscribe to that article. If you are a subscriber, you will be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday evening as we continue the DFS talk after the DFS Tactics show here on Calls. Go show Gabe some support, follow him on Twitter, and subscribe to that article. And then lastly, we are live. Chat is open. What are you thinking about for the 3M? Have you made any wagers? I fired off a couple earlier today. Who are your early picks? Who are you thinking about using, fading away from, all of that? So let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2023 3M Open. And we're going to start over at Windfinder. There we go. So we're going to start over at Windfinder. And last night, mentioned that weren't going to look at any wind metrics or anything since we hadn't looked at a forecast. It looks like it's going to be pretty hot this week, but pretty inconsistent in terms of wind and rain. Apparently they had a storm come through there earlier today, not unlike where I am. Thursday evening looks like there looks to be a thunder shower coming in. Winds are picking up, so if this either gets pushed into Thursday's playing time or Friday's playing time, but there is the potential for some wind in the forecast, and Thursday, and especially Thursday, looks like it's going to be very hot, high into the hundreds. Looks like it's going to cool off over the weekend with highs in the upper 80s. Apparently that's a cold front coming through, but a little bit of wind in the forecast. There is the future forecast that Windfinder has. We will definitely update this Wednesday evening for the DFS Tactics show. We're going to close that out, move on over to Fantasy National, and because there is a little bit of wind potentially in the forecast, I will go ahead and add the moderate and windy filter and back this out to the beginning of 2022. And while that loads, I have seen 3 field changes so far for the 3M. So let me star those players before I forget. David Lingmerth is the first player. Luke List is the second. And most recently, Akshay Bhatia is not playing the 3M. So those 3 players are not in the field this week for the 3M. But In terms of windy conditions, if the winds do pick up in Blaine, Minnesota this week, our top performers since the beginning of 2022 in moderate and windy conditions have been Sung Jae, Justin Thomas, Tony Finau, Billy Horschel, Tom Hoagie, Cameron Young, Hideki, Sahith Theegala, Scott Piercy, and Alex Noren. And do note that the Open Championship is in Fantasy National now, so this is updated through this weekend. We do not collect the Barracuda, as that is a modified Stableford format, so nothing in terms of the Barracuda. For example, that's where Keith Mitchell was this past week. Nothing for the Barracuda, but the Open is in. Not going to do a whole lot of review. Again, broadcasting through a thunderstorm, and I want to try to get through all of this, or as much of this as I can. So let's go ahead and jump straight into some prior leaderboards, figure out the metrics and perhaps some filters that we might want to focus on in the early stages of our week as we prepare for Wednesday, the DFS Tactics show, prepare our lineups, and perhaps find some values in the wager market. So looking at last year's leaderboard here, I'll highlight the top 15. The interesting thing is that nobody was negative in terms of putting, but I did see an interesting note, and I forget where I saw it, and I apologize that I cannot give proper credit to where it is due. But these are supposedly the second easiest greens to putt. So that would make a lot of sense if there are a lot of or no negative putters at the top of the leaderboard. We talked a bit last night, or quite a bit last night, about how this is a ball striking course with all of the water that's prevalent at TPC Twin Cities. You see only 2 players negative off the tee, 3 negative in approach, and the highest negative in approach is Poston at negative 1.3. So just a big emphasis on ball striking. If we sort on these, second, a middling from Troy Merritt, and your winner, your top 3, very high and off the tee. You got some clunkers in here, but some pretty strong correlation up top. Again, minus the clunker in the middling. If we sort on approach, 4th, 16th, 1st, 16th. Again, a couple of more clunkers of made cuts. 4th, 2nd, 7th, very strong. And then putting, more so your cut makers. You do have elite finishers up here, 4th and 7th, but more so kind of your cut makers. Kelly Craft 11th, Poston, Putnam 11th. These are very good finishes, top 15s, but nothing to the level that we saw on the approach. 4th, 1st, 4th, 2nd, 7th off the tee, 2nd, 1st, 7th, 2nd, 7th. So again, just the emphasis on ball striking. I'll go to 2021 just very quickly for that, and to really drive this point home. Again, top 15, just convenient for ties. Only 1 player negative in putting, and it's slightly negative. It's just getting rounded to 0. Look at the negatives in terms of off the tee. Negative 0.3, 0.3, and essentially field average. So ball striking is going to be a big deal. Off the tee is going to be a big deal this week. And if we sort on it, 5th, 6th, a little bit lower down here, not as elite as last year's. Last year's was a very high off the tee mark, and we'll see that in Microsoft Excel. Approach, a little bit more of the same. You got a couple of elite finishes, but more so your cut makers. Putting is actually where it was in 2021. So we'll definitely be looking at some putting, but I am still of the mindset that we are going to want to focus on ball striking. So with that, I will get this prepared again for the next page view. We'll take a look at a couple of different things here. Let's go with off the tee. We'll bring this in to this calendar year. And I might have a filter with off the tee or approach later this week, depending on how the weather turns out. If the winds stay down, then I think this course is going to play easy. But we saw last night that the course moved to, or the 3M played to a +2 cut line, which is kind of on the border of difficult. The winds really picked up last year, and you get all that wind with all the water in play. Lots of bogeys were had last year. So I'm going to wait a little bit longer in the week before I make my decision, if any, on any scoring to par filter. With that, our top off-the-tee players, it would help if I go to the correct year, our top off-the-tee players this calendar year in the field this week, and I'm just making sure I don't have any filters checked, top off-the-tee players in the field this week: Keith Mitchell, Cameron Young, Brent Grant, Gary Woodland, Garrick Higo, Cam Davis, Ludwig Aberg, Kevin Yu, MJ Duffy, and Austin Eckroat. Again, skipping Luke List, he is withdrawn. And similarly, we're going to be wanting to focus on approach and ball striking. So our top strokes gained approach players this calendar year in the field this week: Tony Finau, Gary Woodland, Hideki, Mark Hubbard, Tom Hoagie, Nate Lashley, Sepp Straka, Kevin Roy, Eric Cole, and Aaron Rai. Lastly, in terms of strokes gained, we'll look at some bent putting, and I'm pretty darn confident that we are going to want to look at some fast and lightning bent. I do want to include both, as last year the greens did get up to lightning speeds, and if the rain does not end up coming, then I can foresee TPC Twin Cities baking out a little bit, playing really firm, really fast. So I do not want to go just on fast bent. So our top putters on fast and lightning bent greens since the beginning of 2022. Our top putters in those conditions in the field this week: Christian Bezadenhout, Justin Lauer, JT Poston, Saying You'll Know, Austin Cook, Justin Suh, Patrick Rogers, Sung Jae, Ricky Barnes, and Chesson Hadley. All right, I will get this prepped for the next page view. If my, I think we're still going. Okay. Get this prepped for the next page view. Fairways and greens. We took a little look at this a little bit last night. I still think it's the fairways, although we did see that good drives gained did not have a single player that has averaged a top 40 at the 3M be negative. We look at the top 15. Two players that were essentially field average and two very poor performances in good drives. You see, even though this is a long course, distance really isn't mandatory. It certainly doesn't hurt. Finau, Cameron Champ, Matthew Wolff, your champions, they had distance. But it's not mandatory for elite level of success here at 3M. It's much more so, I would think, in the fairways. Having said that, good drives gained does look like to be the more predictive statistic, at least from last year's leaderboard. If we sort, we'll go on distance. Again, like miscut up here, miscut. Your first single-digit finish is James Hahn, about 12th to 14th down here. So not mandatory. Fairways, Finau and Sung Jae fairly high up here, but we'd also have a miscut from Norlander, some middling to clunker finishes. Not the strongest in terms of correlation. This has been the strongest by far. Good drives gained, top 20. Again, another middling from Troy Merritt, but your winner very high up here. A top 10, a top 5, a runner-up. Good drives gained seems to be the statistic, at least from last year's 3M Open. And we'll check greens, and there's some pretty big numbers in here as well. And a lot of that to do with the amount of water. And that's why I kind of like good drives gained. And the more I thought about it today, the more I really got on board with the good drives gained. Because not only is the fairway going to be important, but you're going to have to miss the water on these approach shots too. So the fairways are generous. They're fairly wide. But if you do miss them, I want to see who can still hit greens, because the rough is long. It is 4 inches thick. So it's can be difficult to play out of. And we'll take a look at 2021 when Cam Champ won fairways and greens. A little bit more distance in 2021, but again, you still had some pretty low numbers here. I mean, Brian Stewart, minus 140, minus 50 from Armour, he's never long, Reevy's never long, so wasn't mandatory. A little bit more success up here, but nothing, extreme other than Vegas and Champ in terms of finishes. Fairways, pretty good, but again, your winner not up here. You don't have anyone inside the top 5. That was elite at fairways gained in 2021. Good drives gained, a little bit better, I suppose. Do have a second up here. Let's see. Quite a few sixths. You have a 67th. Oh yeah. So I was just doing a quick comparison of finishes here. It looks like good drives gained still more so than the fairways in terms of correlation. Greens. Yeah, much like the fairways. So it looking like it is good drives gained for the 3M. So let me reset this, get ready for that. We'll take a look at a few metrics here. We'll start with the good drives gained. Obviously, that's seemingly the more important or most important in this page view. Let's just start with a simple overview look of good drives gained. No filters, just from this calendar year. Our top good drives gained players in the field this week: Aaron Rai, Matthew Neesmith, Lucas Glover, Ches Reavie, Nate Lashley, Ryan Armour, Emiliano Grillo, Sepp Straka, Tyler Duncan, and Doug Gim. Let's take a look at good drives gained, I suppose, on long courses. This is still over 7,400 yards. We can also look at it in the wind as well. I'm still not confident in doing anything with scoring filter, but on long courses, our top good drives gained players: Nate Lashley, Ryan Armour, Satoshi Kodaira, Emiliano Grillo, Henrik Norlander, Matthew Neesmith, Martin Laird, Bryce Garnett, Aaron Ryan, Matt Kuchar. So quite a bit of overlap, but a few new names up here. Kodaira rises quite a bit. Martin Laird's a new name from the good drives gained. Matt Kuchar. So there's that list, and then if we want to look at good drives gained in moderate and windy conditions, we have, since the beginning of 2022, top good drives gained players in those conditions: Sung Jae, Tom Hoge, Aaron Rai, Tony Finau, Emiliano Grillo, Ryan Armour, Nate Lashley, Martin Laird, Gary Woodland, and Adam Long. So again, a whole lot of overlap here, but a few new names. Sung Jae now number 1 when you factor in wind. Finau rises when you factor in wind. I believe Ryan Armour and Nate Lashley were in the top 10 for all 3. I know Martin Laird was in there for 2 of the 3. So, most of the top 10 pretty consistent, changing a little bit per filter. But that gives you an idea of the players who should suit well to the 3M in terms of hitting fairways or hitting the green if they're not so far wayward that they're in the water. Something else that we can look at, I'll have to remove the windy filter. Nothing to do with Architect. This is an Arnold Palmer design. But scrambling here was less successful than the average tour course. So that might be something that we want to look at, especially with all the water, trying to scramble for bogeys and whatnot, trying to avoid doubles. So our top scramblers this calendar year, no filters, just top scramblers: Matt Kuchar, Sam Ryder, Adam Hadwin, Hideki, Peter Bonatti, Aaron Badley, Jimmy Walker, Alex Noren, Andrew Novak, Chad Ramey, and Jonathan Bird. All right, I think that's going to do it for that page view. Greens might end up making its way into the mixed condition model, but again, just kind of focus on the good drives gained at the moment. We will get this ready for the scoring. And last year, the scoring, a little bit everywhere. Now, Finau and Griot, they were more so in the bogeys. Sungjae, Hoagie, James Hahn, Scott Piercy really favored the birdies. Willett was bogeys. And we saw this last night in Microsoft Excel, that they were very darn even. I believe birdies were slightly more important than the average full field course. Bogey slightly less important than the average full field course. Don't see much here in double bogey avoidance. While it might seem like something that you could think about, I think I would more so look at scrambling if I were going to look at double bogey avoidance. I don't see a whole lot here. I mean, this is very, very strong up top, but you have a clunker of a made cut, some middlings in here. Bogey avoidance, much more correlating to the upper end of the leaderboard for what it's worth. But I still don't see a whole lot there that would sway me one way or the other to definitively say birdies or bogeys. Let's see. Again, our winner slightly in the birdies gained, bogeys avoided. It's really, really close. And that's why I don't have a strong feeling on the difficulty this week, difficulty to par, whether it's easy or difficult, bogeys or birdies. I'm thinking it's just going to be opportunities. Yeah, nothing. I mean, again, very, very elite up top. You would expect that from the birdies game, but it kind of falls off pretty quickly there. Bogeys, probably a little bit more correlating, all things considered. So I'm thinking I don't see too much that I want to focus on in terms of scoring. So let's just take a look at opportunities. We'll take a look at opportunities in a few different ways. We'll just start with the players that are the best at giving themselves opportunities this calendar year. So since January 1st of 2023, our top opportunities gained players: Justin Thomas, Hideki, Ryan Palmer, Cameron Young, Tom Hoagie, Ludwig Aberg, Ben Martin, Sungjae, Tony Finau, and Eric Cole. Skipping Luke List, he is not playing this week. We'll take a look at opportunities in the wind, opportunities on long courses. And again, this might not come into play as the forecast develops and hopefully straightens out and becomes consistent. But opportunities on long courses, our top performers in those conditions: Ryan Palmer, Cameron Young, Brandt Snedeker, Tom Hoagie, Tony Finau, Justin Thomas, Hideki, Sam Stevens, Kramer Hickok, and Ryan Moore. So a few new names there, especially Sam Stevens. I think that's the first time we've said him tonight. Kramer Hickok and Ryan Moore, that's the first time we definitely said them tonight. Thomas and Finau and Hideki, they were up there for opportunities. Hoagie, I believe, was up there in opportunities as well. And then finally, opportunities on in moderate and windy conditions. We have Cameron Young, Justin Thomas, Tony Finau, Tom Hoagie, Hideki, Lee Hodges, James Hahn, Brandt Snedeker, Kevin Yu, Carson Young, and Satoshi Kodaira. So a lot of overlap between that set of top tens. JT, Tony Finau, Hoagie, Hideki, Cameron Young was up there for at least two of the three, if not all three. So there's a look at the top opportunities gained players. If I were to lean one way, it would be bogeys avoided, but I don't like going bogeys avoided unless I know it's difficult or know it's easy. We're not confident that the wind is going to be up. So really the only way we could look at bogeys avoided would be maybe on long courses. And I am not really all that confident I want to use the long course filter this week. But our top bogey avoiders on long courses in the field this week: Gary Woodland, Nate Lashley, Hideki, Sung Jae, Bo Hostler, Jonathan Bird, Brandon Wu, Nikolai Højgaard, Dylan Wu, and Wesley Bryan. Again, I'm not terribly confident in it. I would just lean bogeys avoided over birdies gained at the moment, but I'm not confident that they're going to end up in the mixed condition model. I'm pretty sure it's going to be opportunities gained. Okay, we'll move to proximity, something that we definitely want to make, to scrutinize a little bit, considering the data and the graphs didn't match up as they normally don't for proximity. Top 15, you see total procs, only one player is negative in terms of total procs. So that would lend itself to thinking total procs might be something, and it does make a little bit of sense as these greens are larger than the average PGA Tour course. So total procs could be something. 150 to 175 is actually the more correlating, or most correlating in terms of players that were successful from that range. But the majority of approach shots come in 175 to 200 and 200 plus. So if we sort, again on total procs, I mean, we have a miscut fairly high on Ben Coles, but you've got a top 5, a top 10, a top 10, a decent amount of correlation for proximity or by proximity standards. If we look at 150 to 175, like now, the leader in that category missed the cut. A few miscuts higher up. Do you have a couple of elite finishes? Not great. Okay, there you go. Our winner led by a good margin in 175 to 200, so that would back up what is in the course breakdown in Fantasy National, as at least in terms of versus the average tour event, 175 to 200 mandates the most, again, versus the average tour event. Okay, that is something. We have some cut making in here as well. A couple of high missed cuts, but pretty strong to always see your winner leading a category. 200 plus. Again, cut making. Maybe a high missed cut up here, but all right. Maybe the 150 to 175 to 200, excuse me, because the winner led in it. Again, top 15, a little bit less in terms of total procs, although 12.6 over 4 rounds is pretty darn close to field average. 40 is not terrible. Now, Keith Mitchell was nowhere near proximity-wise. The 150 to 175 looks horrendous in 2021. So this is the issue with proximity that I have. It just doesn't seem very very consistent across the PGA Tour in general. Not a lot here in total procs. Nothing here in the 150 to 175. 175 to 2. Again, doesn't look like anything really. 58, miscut. Yeah. 200 plus. Maybe a little bit. I don't feel great about it. So I'm going to skip. Actually, I probably shouldn't skip total procs or skip proximity altogether. So for this calendar year, let me make sure I don't have, let's take off the filters. We'll take a look at a couple of different ones just very quickly. Our top total procs players in the field this week at the 3M: Lucas Glover, Nate Lashley, Ches Reavie, Tom Hoagie, Ryan Armour, Michael Kim, Tony Finau, Justin Suh, Hideki, and Ryan Moore. I still think it's the 175 to 200 by the slightest of margins, although I think I would lean total procs if I were to use anything on this page view. I'm just not confident in it. Our top 175 to 200: Gary Woodland, Ches Reavie, Hideki, Lucas Glover, Taylor Pendrith, Marty Doe, Nate Lashley, Trey Mullinax, Sam Stevens, Ludwig Aberg, and Emiliano Grillo. All right. Par threes. This turned out to be a little bit more important than I thought they were going to be, especially if you are to go and check out the research that I posted on social media earlier today. As par threes were a part of the criteria from previous winners. We see Finau 3.9, a few players at 3.9, decent amount of correlation here. All of it came in the 175 to 200, which is interesting because only one falls to this range on the scorecard. But take a look. We have 177, easily in the 175 to 200. 204, you can envision that coming below 200. And you have a 202. You can envision that one coming below the 200 threshold. So perhaps the 175 to 200 is the range, and that's what we saw last night in Microsoft Excel. Sorting on it, again, a lot like the total par threes in terms of correlation. 150 to 179, 2.8, but look at all those missed cuts up there. 200 to 225, and not strong. It really is the 175 to 200. 2021 par threes. 5.1 from Cameron Champ. Again, we noticed this. The winners were really taking advantage of par threes, whereas top 10s and the top 5s especially, they weren't. Peter Malnati, a miscut, fairly high, but around Peter Malnati is a lot of elite performance. And again, a lot of it in the 175 to 200. Malnati, 4.2, but 28th, 16th, a clunker from Seifert, then 1st, 6th, 5th, 6th. Strong. I am not sure if I want to separate out the 175 to 200 by themselves, but I think it's correct to look at them. So, our top total par 3 performers this calendar year: Emiliano Grillo, Nikolai Højgaard, Eric Cole, Nate Lashley, Sam Ryder, Ben Griffin, Christian Bezuidenhout, Justin Suh, Aaron Baddeley, and Robbie Shelton. 175 to 200, you have Lashley's number 1, Bezuidenhout's number 4. Give some honorable mentions here to Nikolai Højgaard, to Sam Ryder, Aaron Baddeley, Stefan Jaeger. Carson Young's just outside the top 10 in both. So there's a few names for these par 3s. And I'll sort on the par 3s there for you very, very quickly from 175 to 200. Lashley, Novak, Glover, Seabez, Sungjae, Michael Kim, Matthew Neesmith, Ches Reavie, Dylan Wu, and Justin Thomas. All right, par 4s, we saw that they carried a whole lot of weight. Last night in Microsoft Excel, 12.8 from Finau, 10.8 from James Hahn. We highlight the top 15 here. Again, not a single player negative in terms of par 4s. There are a few 350 to 4s, and look, you only have 2 players negative in that range, and they were negative 0.4, so could be something absolutely. But if we sort, first, 11th, 4th, 2nd, 4th, 11th, 4th, 7th, just huge amounts of correlation. Par 4s are going to carry a decent amount of weight. 5.6 from Scott Piercy. That's a big number. Not the most correlating, but that's a big number, 5.6. 6.2, Sungjae. It's more like it. 450 to 5 is a 7. Oh, look at this. 11th, 1st, 4th, 7th. You have to come down to Rick Lamb, who's probably at 10th or just outside of it in terms of 450 to 5 before you even get a poor made cut or clunker of a made cut. 455 looks the strongest from last year. And then 2021 par 4s. Look, just top 15, and you have to scroll a long way before you get to a negative in terms of par 4s. So they're just still going to carry some weight. 455s, look at the top 15, only 1 player negative. I'm thinking it might be the 450 to 5s, at least from past leaderboards. We sort on at 3.5. The winner did lead in the short par 4s. A miscut from Sepp Straka, but pretty good around him. 6.5. Cut makers, a couple of elite finishes, and then Cameron Champ was very good from at the 500 plus, but I don't see that particularly being the more important range. All right, going to this year's field, top par 4 performers: Hideki, Tony Finau, Eric Cole, Aaron Rai, Stefan Jaeger, Ryan Fox, Sepp Straka, Sungjae, Sahith Theegala, and Austin Eckert. Again, skipping Luke List, he is withdrawn. 350 to 4s, if they do end up playing important: Norman, Gribble, Eric Cole, Harry Hall, Mitchell, Lanto Griffin, Justin Lauer, Kramer Hickok, Scott Piercy. But I still think it's probably the 450 to 5s. So our top 450 to 500 par 4 players this calendar year: Ryan Fox, Sam Stevens, Taylor Pendrith, Austin Eckert, Stefan Jaeger, Bo Hostler, Lee Hodges, Hideki, Sahith Theegala, and Mark Hubbard. So scanning across here, Austin Eckert, you probably want to put a star next to. He's good at the 350 to 4s, but excellent to elite at the other two, total and 450 to 5. Hideki. All right, so Hideki is probably the best here. 1st, 16th, and 8th. Hideki's just been devouring par 4s in general this year. Sepp Straka, 7th, 24th, and 11th. Would be another one you want to probably put a star next to for par 4s. Tony Finau, 2nd, 14th, and 13th. I was going to say Luke List. He's withdrawn. Sungjae, 7th, 35th, and 20th. All right, lastly, we'll take a look quickly at par 5s. So Finau didn't necessarily play them all that well, but you see quite a bit here in the top 5s did. 6.7. I mean, look at that correlation. Other than Finau, who's not in there, and you got your 2nd, 4th, 11th, top 20 in Cameron Champ. A lot of correlation there, and it's all in the 550 to 600. Again, all 3 par 5s measure to this length, and you see, I mean, it was the highest was a 2 from the 600 to 650, and he missed the cut. It's going to be that way for the par 5s. Look, every single one in 2021 fell into that range. So we are clearly looking at just that range of par 5s. So our top par 5 performers in the field this week from 550 to 600 yards: Adam Long, Ludwig Aberg, Patton Kazire, Dylan Wu, Sungjae, Tony Finau, Aaron Rai, Wesley Bryan, Harry Higgs, and Matt Kuchar. All right. With that, we're going to move to Microsoft Excel. We're going to take a look at a few different things here very, very quickly. Last year's mixed condition model was pretty poor, all things considered. My top 20 here, I missed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So half of my top 20 missed the cut. I'm going to count these as missed cuts. I don't know if they withdrew during or before, but still 10 out of 20, not good at all. Only really getting saved by the fact that I had the winner second, but he was very popular. So that wasn't really the boldest of suggestions or boldest of rankings. I had Armour and Lashley up here who were unique. They did not perform well. Poston off of his win at the John Deere. Adam Long, maybe middling. So not the greatest in terms of results from last year's 3M. 20% in strokes gained approach. That makes a lot of sense. We've focused on ball striking all week. We're going to continue to do so. 15% in moderate and windy conditions. Again, I mentioned that the wind really picked up last year, so I did put a lot of emphasis in wind. 15% fairways gained with long rough. Okay, I can understand why the rough was long. You obviously wanted to avoid the water, but I think we're going to be looking at good drives gained, not fairways, and we're definitely not going to be using this filter, I don't think. So there's another 15. I mean, there's 15% I'm straight up getting back. 15% or I can move some percentage around, but I'm definitely not using that metric, which is the most important part. So that right there is going to get fixed ideally. 15% par fours. Okay, we again along the same lines. You see Tony Finau was number 1 in par fours coming into the week. He wins. Poston was very good at them. Adam Long was very good at them. Sung Jae was good at them. So that looks like it probably performed pretty well. 10% and off the tee, I can see myself wanting to raise that percentage a little bit, but definitely looked at the emphasis of ball striking, 20% approach, 10% off the tee. I had 10% in bent and fast. Makes a lot of sense because Lightning didn't come into play until last year, so they had only had fast bent greens. So we'll look at fast and Lightning this year, but I had 10%. Okay. I wouldn't do any more than 10%. I'm actually kind of leaning towards 5. You see, I had 10% in the specific length of par 5s. And I did separate out, or I only looked at, didn't even separate it out, I only looked at the 175 to 200 par 3s. So how were these in terms of predictive? Well, not very good. Clearly, as you can tell from the results, but approach, pretty poor. Strokes gained total in the wind, moderate windy conditions. I can't say terrible, but wasn't great. 62, probably about middling. Fairways gained, not it at all. Now the par 4s were the best, and that does bring me a little bit of comfort. We saw just how important they were in the prior leaderboards. We'll see that again here in a little bit, just how important they are. So par 4s were clearly the best, and off the tee was second. So that's why I'm really thinking about increasing the percentage that I put in off the tee for this year's mixed condition model. Putting 64, okay. Surprisingly, the par 5s and the par 3s weren't very predictive at all. Now, of course, this could be, it's only 1 year sample size. I only started making the models, last year, or really in-depth models last year. So after this mixed condition model, we'll start to have a little bit of data we can compare it to. But this might be an outlier. This might be, a 1 year fluke, or it might be true. We don't know yet. But I'm definitely going to be looking at the 550 to 600 par 5s, since literally every single par 5 falls into there, and I'll show you. Year over year, they're generally all in that range. Interesting to see that the 175 to 200, which would have been the range that I would separate out for the par 3s, didn't perform all that well. So really, par 4s off the tee, I'm going to have approach. Maybe it was just a bad bad week for predicting or predictive analytics on strokes gained approach. But this is definitely emphasizing the par 4s and the off the tee. So we have a lot to improve upon. Oh, shucks. We have a lot to improve upon from last year's 3M mixed condition model. So with that, I'll close that out, and let's move on over to the comparison course, and let's look at some detail. Last night we looked at TPC Twin Cities against other full field courses. Let's just really dig into the detail here, figure out exactly the metrics that are going to play. We saw in the prior leaderboards the off the tee was very important last year. That is a very big outlier, but it's been pretty consistent the other 3 years. So if we take that out, it still comes to a 145, which is still 12.5% more important. So the off the tee is going to be important. It was just extremely important last year. Same with the approach, although it's not as much of a high outlier. In fact, 2021, it was a very low outlier. If you take that out, it becomes 40% more important. So again, just heavy emphasis on ball striking this week. Around the green has been very consistent and very not important. Putting's been consistent. So again, 5-10% probably where I'm looking at in the mixed condition model. Distance has been kind of all over the place. The initial or inaugural 3M was very important. Distance was somewhat important last year. 2021 didn't matter at all. 2020, not really. Good drives gained steadily has been improving in terms of importance, and that's why I'm thinking we're going to be wanting to look at good drives gained. On that same line, greens has steadily improved or increased in its importance as well. That's why greens might make it into the mixed condition model, but I'm still liking the good drives gained because I want players that'll hit the fairway to avoid all the water. If they don't hit the fairway, I want to see if they're still adept enough to hit the green. So definitely going to have this. I can envision the mixed condition model having some greens in there as well. Just don't know what filter. We looked at scoring. This is going to show that the birdies are heavily more important than the bogeys, which is fine, I suppose. And again, this is a very low outlier. If we take that away, you'd probably be looking at birdies gained over the bogeys avoided, but even with that outlier, it's 12%. So nothing drastic. Say like the Rocket Mortgage, where we know it's a birdie fest, 25%. Even the Wyndham next week is 15%. So, just not sure if we include the low outlier, comes all the way down to 2% or 2.5%, what we saw last night. I'm still thinking opportunities. Bogeys have been steadily on the rise, I suppose, with the exception of flip-flopping those two. I don't know. I'm just not very confident in a scoring metric this week. I'm thinking opportunities, and that's it. Moving to par threes. All right, so indeed, a little bit more than half of our strokes gained total in par threes come from 175 to 200. The par threes have been pretty darn consistent. Where last year screwed up, essentially, was that the 175 to 200s, while they were still the most important, they were pretty darn close to the 150 to 175s. This is a pretty high outlier. So if you remove that outlier, it actually becomes less than half. So that could be where the issue is. Probably looking at just total par threes. Okay. Because they've been fairly consistent. This is a slightly high outlier, but not really all that much. So probably looking at just par threes in general. Par fours, we saw that the 350 to 4 were carrying some weight. We see that there. But really, all three of these ranges are carrying quite a bit of weight. And I just think it's total par fours. But they are very important. Almost a 5, which is 12% more important. So I don't see a specific range here, because they're all pretty darn close to each other, especially these two. And with the extreme weight in par fours, it looks like we're just looking at par fours. And finally, another big reason why I really think, or why I'm just going to use the 550 to 6, we haven't had anything less than 550-yard par 5 since the inaugural 3M. And only last year did one of the par 5s play beyond 600 yards. So that's why we're going to be looking at this entirely. Just this range. I'll show you the detail for the procs. It's not, the numbers aren't going to mean much, so I'll have to show you the percentages against other full field courses. Again, 175 to 200, about field average. 150 to 175, thanks to last year's. Okay, so thanks to last year's was really high. In fact, really the 2021's is so low. If you take that out, perhaps we're wanting to look at 150 to 175. I mean, total procs, to be fair, is 15% higher than the full field course average, but you also have a very high outlier from last year. If we remove that, okay, then it comes all the way to negative. So I don't feel strongly about any particular proximity. Would be interested in your thoughts, though, from the community, so put that in chat or in the comments. But there's a look at TPC Twin Cities and the 3M from a raw data perspective. I really kind of focus on pars 3s, 4s, and 5s and see if we want to separate out any of the ranges. That's what really all that is for. And we'll see that, we saw the par 5s we want to separate out. None of the par 4 links we want to separate out, just off your screen. So we don't want to really separate out any of the par 4 since they're all carrying about the same weight. They're just important. So there's that. We're going to end the show off with the early look file and the performance at TPC Twin Cities. And some of these metrics that we think are going to play the most important and who has performed well at them. So let's start with off the tee. Our top off the tee players in the 4 years that the 3M has happened. Again, this has only been on tour since 2019, so we only have 4 years. In those 4 years, Chappell, just 1 year, so Sungjae has been very good off the tee here. Doug Gim has been very good off the tee here. Keith Mitchell, he's the number 1 off the tee player in the field this week, I think. Seth Straka has been very good off the tee here, but his performance is very lackluster. Robbie Shelton 1 for 2. Troy Merritt 3 for 4. Has been very good off the tee here. Stuart Sink, Griot, Cage Lee, Norlander to a lesser extent, Bryce Garnett. So there's your top off the tee players at the 3M. We also want to look at approach. So our top stroke gain approach players here at the 3M. Several guys with 1 year. Strokes gained total leader for the 4 years, Tony Finau. No surprise there. Matthias Schwab 2 for 2. Hank Lebiota 3 for 3. Very good with his irons here. Adam Long 3 for 4. Robert Streb 2 for 4. Griot. Adam Hadwin 3 for 3. Ches Reeves 2 for 2. Fratelli 2 for 4, but nothing inspiring in terms of finishes. Martin Laird, Cam Davis. So Cam Davis has been solid here. Nothing negative. 3 for 4. There's Straka again. So he's doing it ball striking wise. It's surprising to see he's not putt well because he's generally a good putter. Interesting to note. All right. Speaking of putting, we'll take a look at putting very quickly. Our top putters in the 4 years at TPC Twin Cities. Noren, only 1 year, so JT Poston, 2 for 2. Kelly Craft, 1 for 2. Mitchell and Hadwin. Cameron Champ. Anytime you get Cameron Champ putting, you really got to look out. So it looks like he likes these greens. Baddeley, 3 for 3. Michael Gligic, 3 for 3. There's a name for you. Michael Kim has not performed well here. Ricky Barnes not performed well, but putts well. Sam Ryder. Brian Armour. Okay. Couple more. We'll look at good drives gained. And then we'll go into the 3s, 4s, and 5s. So good drives gained. There. Adam Hadwin, your leader in good drives gained of players who have played it multiple times. Adam Long, Ches Reavie, JT Poston, Robbie Shelton, 1 for 2. Kramer Hickok. There's Finau. There's Garnett. Laird, Griot. Stuart Sink has played well here. A little bit lower, Ryan Armour. Doug Gim. All right. Pars 3s, 4s, and 5s. And we'll end the show off with those. So your best par 3 performers at the 3M these 4 years, JT Poston. Ben Taylor has played them very well, but does not have anything in terms of success but he's played the par 3s well. Just hadn't done anything else well. Cameron Champ, Michael Gligic, Doug Gim, 2 for 3. Lee Biota again. Ryder and Armour, a little bit less in terms of success, but they played par 3s well. Grillo, Baddeley, Finau, Walker. All right. Par 4s, and then the specific length of par 5s. So the top par 4 performers at the 3M the past, or in the 4 years of its existence. Sung Jae, see 2 for 2, average finish inside the top 10. Tony Finau, strokes gained total leader the 4 years here. JT Poston, Norlander 1 for 2. Cameron Davis 3 for 4. Kelly Craft, James Hahn, less so in terms of success, but he's played the par 4s well. Stuart Sink, Bryce Garnett, Lee Biota, Long, Gim, Hadwin. Okay, so these names start popping up fairly often. Finally, 550 to 600 par 5s, since that is where the majority of, or all of the par 5s play. Luke List, who's not in the field. I need to remove that line. Grillo, Hadwin, Rogers, coming off the disappointing playoff loss at the Barracuda. Neesmith played the par 5s well, but nothing in terms of success. Sung Jae played them well. Robbie Shelton. Boy, Sahith Theegala, he has not played well here. 0 for 2. Average finish outside of the 100th. Ryan Brim and Michael Kim. Bryce Garnett. So there's a look at the players and the metrics and how they've done at TPC Twin Cities. I will sort this back on best finish. And that's going to do it for the Data Dive show this evening. It ended up going right on time. It felt a little rushed on my end. I apologize for that. Was broadcasting through a thunderstorm. Wanted to get through it all. Fortunately, I did. Thanks for tuning in, watching, listening, supporting the channel. I always appreciate it. Be sure to leave it in the comments. Any wagers you've made, who you might be looking at in terms of a pivot or a fade. All of that good stuff. But thanks for this supporting the channel in all the ways that you all do. For all of the wagers that you have made so far this week for the 3M, for all of the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the 3M, until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.